Have you ever stood at a crossroads in your life, where the path of compromise seemed easier than the road of integrity? Imagine Jerusalem, around 970 BCE. A man walks alone through the bustling streets toward the newly established temple. His name is David, a shepherd who became king, a warrior who became a poet, a sinner who became a man after God's own heart. As he approaches the sacred grounds, he pauses, looking inward, and begins to compose what we now know as Psalm 26, a profound declaration of integrity in a world full of compromise. What if I told you that the ancient words written over 3,000 years ago could provide the exact blueprint we need for navigating our modern ethical dilemmas? This is precisely what Psalm 26 offers us. On March 15, 586 BCE, the Babylonian army under King Nebuchadnezzar II breached the walls of Jerusalem, setting in motion the destruction of Solomon's temple and the exile of the Jewish people. During this period of national catastrophe, many Israelites clung to the Psalms as sources of hope and guidance. Among these, Psalm 26 stood out as a powerful affirmation of personal integrity amid collective suffering. The fascinating aspect of Psalm 26 is that while traditionally attributed to David, who lived approximately 400 years earlier, scholars like John Day of Oxford University have noted that the Psalm's preoccupation with the temple and its rituals suggests it may have been composed or significantly adapted during the late monarchic or early exilic period. This contextual understanding enriches our appreciation of the Psalm's themes of vindication and moral integrity. But what exactly does Psalm 26 tell us? Let's explore this remarkable ancient poem that begins with the powerful declaration, "Vindicate me, O Lord, for I have walked in my integrity." The Hebrew word for integrity used here is tam, which carries connotations of completeness, moral innocence, and simplicity of heart. Unlike our modern concept of integrity, which often focuses on moral consistency, the biblical concept encompassed the idea of wholeness, an undivided heart that pursues righteousness without reservation. According to biblical scholar Walter Brueggemann's 2014 analysis, this understanding of integrity sees it not merely as a personal virtue but as a relational quality that connects the individual to both God and community. Imagine living in ancient Israel, where your standing before God was intrinsically connected to your standing within the community. The psalmist's plea for vindication isn't just a personal request but a desire for restoration to full communion with both God and the worshiping assembly. When the psalmist declares, "I do not sit with the deceitful, nor do I associate with hypocrites," he's making a profound statement about the company we keep and how it shapes our character. A study conducted by the University of Michigan in 2019 found that people tend to adopt the moral standards of those with whom they regularly associate. This scientific finding echoes the ancient wisdom of Psalm 26, that our moral identity is influenced by our social circles. The psalmist understood this millennia before modern psychology confirmed it. When we look at the structure of Psalm 26, we see a deliberate literary arrangement that reinforces its message. The psalm begins and ends with declarations of integrity and faith, creating what scholars call an inclusio, a literary device that frames the content within expressions of unwavering trust. Within this frame, the psalmist provides evidence of his integrity through negative statements, what he has not done, and positive affirmations, what he has done and continues to do. Consider the historical context of when this psalm was potentially being recited. During the Babylonian exile beginning in 586 BCE, the Jewish people faced immense pressure to assimilate into Babylonian culture and religious practices. Maintaining integrity to their faith and traditions required tremendous courage and conviction. The Psalm's declaration, "I have always been mindful of your unfailing love and have lived in reliance on your faithfulness," would have resonated powerfully with exiles struggling to maintain their identity in a foreign land. Archaeological findings from this period, including the Babylonian Chronicles and the Cyrus Cylinder, 539 BCE, confirm the historical circumstances of the exile and eventual return. These external sources provide valuable context for understanding the existential crisis that prompted such powerful expressions of faith and integrity. But what makes Psalm 26 particularly remarkable is its balance between self-examination and divine dependence. The psalmist doesn't merely assert his integrity, he invites divine scrutiny. Test me, Lord, and try me, examine my heart and my mind. This is not the language of self-righteousness but of someone who understands that true integrity requires both personal commitment and divine grace. Dr. Ellen Davis of Duke Divinity School points out that this invitation to divine testing represents a profound act of spiritual vulnerability. The Hebrew words used here, test, bakon, try, neza, and examine, saraf, are metaphors drawn from metallurgy, referring to the refining process of precious metals. The psalmist is essentially asking God to put him through the refiner's fire to prove the genuineness of his faith and character. In today's world, where integrity often seems in short supply, Psalm 26 challenges us to embrace this same level of moral courage and transparency. A 2022 global survey by the Ethics and Compliance Initiative found that 33% of employees observed misconduct in their workplaces, but only 61% reported what they saw. The fear of retaliation and social consequences often prevents people from standing for what's right. The psalmist's declaration, "I have trusted in the Lord without wavering," serves as a powerful antidote to such fear. When our security is grounded in God rather than social approval, we find the courage to maintain integrity even when it costs us. As we move deeper into the psalm, we encounter the beautiful imagery of worship and devotion. "I wash my hands in innocence, and go about your altar, Lord, proclaiming aloud your praise and telling of all your wonderful deeds." Here, the physical act of washing hands symbolizes moral purification, a theme that resonates throughout biblical literature. The ancient Jewish practice of netilat yadayim, ritual hand-washing, before prayer and meals continues to this day. What's fascinating is how this ritual prefigured our modern understanding of hygiene. Long before germ theory was established in the late 19th century by scientists like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, religious practices were promoting cleanliness that had both spiritual and practical benefits. But the hand-washing mentioned in this psalm goes beyond physical cleanliness. It represents the alignment of external actions with internal convictions, another dimension of integrity. The psalmist doesn't merely observe rituals, he embraces their deeper spiritual significance. The Hebrew concept of avoda, worship, encompasses both service and worship, suggesting that devotion to God should manifest in both ritual observance and ethical living. Historical records indicate that during the Second Temple period, 516 BCE, 70 CE, pilgrims would travel to Jerusalem 3 times yearly for major festivals. The journey itself was considered preparatory for worship, with travelers singing the Psalms of Ascent, Psalms 120 to 134, as they approached Jerusalem. While Psalm 26 isn't among these designated pilgrimage psalms, its themes of preparation for proper worship would have resonated with pilgrims making these sacred journeys. Professor Carol Myers of Duke University has documented how these pilgrimages fostered a sense of national identity and religious cohesion. The communal experience of worship, which Psalm 26 celebrates, was crucial for maintaining Israel's distinctive identity among the nations. When the psalmist declares, "I love the house where you live, O Lord, the place where your glory dwells," he's expressing attachment not just to a building but to the community gathered around God's presence. Recent archaeological discoveries at Tel Matzah, just outside Jerusalem, have uncovered a temple complex dating back to the 10th century BCE, the time of David and Solomon. These findings suggest that worship practices were more diverse in ancient Israel than previously thought, making the psalmist's commitment to proper worship at the designated sanctuary even more significant in a religious landscape with competing practices. The theme of separation from evildoers runs throughout Psalm 26. I abhor the assembly of evildoers and refuse to sit with the wicked. This isn't about self-righteous isolation but about making conscious choices regarding our associations. The Hebrew word for abhor, sane, conveys a strong emotional revulsion, indicating that moral integrity involves not only actions but also proper emotional responses to evil. During the Maccabean Revolt, 167 to 160 BCE, many Jews faced the ultimate test of integrity when commanded by Antiochus IV Epiphanes to participate in pagan sacrifices. According to the historical account in 2 Maccabees 6-7, many chose death rather than compromise their religious integrity. While this event occurred centuries after Psalm 26 was composed, it illustrates the enduring power of the psalm's vision of unwavering integrity. The psalm concludes with a powerful contrast: my feet stand on level ground, in the great congregation I will praise the Lord. The image of level ground, mishar in Hebrew, conveys both moral uprightness and the security that comes from living with integrity. The psalmist has moved from the anxiety of requesting vindication to the confidence of standing firmly in God's presence. Psychologist Martin Seligman's research on authentic happiness, published in 2002, found that living in alignment with one's core values significantly contributes to psychological well-being. The ancient wisdom of Psalm 26 anticipated this finding, showing that integrity isn't just spiritually important but psychologically beneficial. The level ground of integrity provides stability in life's storms. So what can we learn from this ancient prayer that remains relevant in our modern context? First, integrity requires self-examination. The psalmist begins by inviting divine scrutiny. Examine me, O Lord, and try me, test my mind and my heart. In our fast-paced world, we rarely take time for moral reflection. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that regular self-reflection correlates strongly with ethical decision-making and moral development. Psalm 26 calls us to pause and honestly evaluate our character, motives, and actions. Second, integrity involves intentional separation from corrupting influences. When the psalmist declares, I do not sit with the deceitful, he's establishing boundaries against moral compromise. Media psychologist Dr. Sarah Coyne's research at Brigham Young University has demonstrated how media consumption affects moral reasoning, especially in adolescence. The Psalm's ancient wisdom reminds us to be mindful of the voices and influences we allow into our inner circles. Third, integrity manifests through positive devotion, not just avoidance of wrong. The psalmist doesn't merely flee evil, he actively pursues worship. I go around your altar, O Lord, proclaiming thanksgiving aloud. True integrity isn't characterized by what we don't do but by what we passionately pursue. This positive dimension of integrity often goes unrecognized in contemporary discussions of ethics. Fourth, integrity requires community. The psalm concludes with worship in the great congregation, reminding us that moral formation happens in community. Recent research by sociologist Robert Putnam highlights how communal religious practice strengthens moral commitments. The individualism of modern society often undermines this crucial aspect of moral development that the psalmist understood millennia ago. Consider the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who returned to Nazi Germany in 1939 despite having safe haven in America. His decision to stand against Hitler's regime ultimately cost him his life on April 9, 1945, just weeks before the war's end. When questioned about his choice, Bonhoeffer reportedly said, I cannot claim my innocence if I am not standing with those who are suffering. His life embodied the integrity Psalm 26 describes, an unwavering commitment to righteous principles regardless of personal cost. Or think about Malala Yousafzai, who on October 9, 2012, was shot by Taliban gunmen for advocating girls' education in Pakistan. Despite the attack, she refused to compromise her principles, saying, "One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world." Her courage echoes the psalmist's commitment to standing firmly on level ground despite opposition. What's particularly striking about Psalm 26 is its balance between confidence and humility. The psalmist isn't claiming moral perfection but moral direction. The Hebrew concept of halakha, the way one walks, views integrity not as a static achievement but as a continuous journey. This understanding offers hope for those of us who struggle with moral failure. Integrity isn't about never falling but about maintaining the right direction over time. Historical evidence suggests that during the Babylonian exile, the Jewish community faced unprecedented challenges to their religious identity. The destruction of the temple in 586 BCE removed their central worship location, forcing them to develop new practices like synagogue worship and Torah study that could be maintained outside their homeland. Psalm 26's focus on internal integrity rather than just external ritual would have offered crucial guidance during this transitional period. The contemporary relevance of Psalm 26 extends beyond individual ethics to organizational integrity. A 2023 study by the Corporate Ethics Institute found that companies with strong ethical cultures experience 15% less employee turnover and 22% higher productivity than those with weak ethical frameworks. The Psalm's wisdom about the connection between personal integrity and community well-being applies equally to modern institutions. Let's explore the Psalm's central metaphor further. When the psalmist says, "I have walked in my integrity," he's using the Hebrew word halakti, "I have walked," which shares the same root as halakha, the Jewish legal tradition that guides daily conduct. This walking metaphor suggests that integrity isn't a destination but a journey, requiring consistent choices and continual movement in the right direction. According to Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, this understanding of integrity as a journey rather than a state offers profound psychological insight. In his 2015 book, Not in God's Name, Sachs argues that moral growth comes through incremental daily choices rather than dramatic moral heroism. The psalmist's walking metaphor captures this developmental understanding of character formation. The neuroscience of habit formation supports this view. Research by neuropsychologist and Graybiel at MIT has shown that moral habits, like other behaviors, become encoded in neural pathways through repetition. The psalmist's commitment to walk in integrity aligns perfectly with modern understanding of how character develops through consistent choices that eventually become second nature. When we look at the social context of ancient Israel, we gain even deeper appreciation for the psalmist's stance. The tribal nature of ancient Near Eastern societies meant that loyalty to family and clan often superseded other moral considerations. By declaring allegiance to universal ethical principles regardless of social pressure, the psalmist was taking a countercultural position that anticipated the development of universal human rights thousands of years later. Archaeological evidence from Iron Age Israel reveals a society with significant social stratification and economic inequality. The prophet Amos, writing around 750 BCE, condemns those who trample on the poor and deny justice to the oppressed. Against this backdrop, the psalmist's commitment to ethical purity represents a powerful rejection of the moral compromises that often accompanied wealth and power in ancient societies, a message that remains urgently relevant today. The digital revolution has created new challenges to integrity that the psalmist could never have imagined. A 2024 survey found that 62% of Internet users admit to presenting different versions of themselves on different platforms. The psalmist's call for undivided integrity, being the same person in private prayer as in public assembly, speaks powerfully to our fragmented digital identities. Cognitive psychologist Robert Cialdini's research on ethical decision-making identifies social proof, looking to others' behavior for guidance, as a primary factor in moral choices. When the psalmist declares, "I have not sat with those who are deceitful," he's demonstrating awareness of how social environments shape moral behavior, a principle confirmed by modern research. The psalm's conclusion returns to its opening theme of divine vindication, creating a circular structure that emphasizes security in God's judgment. This literary pattern reflects the Hebrew understanding of time as cyclical rather than purely linear. By ending where it began, the psalm suggests that integrity creates a stable foundation for life, what philosopher Alasdair MacIntyre calls a narrative unity to one's character. As we consider how Psalm 26 might guide our own pursuit of integrity, 5 practical principles emerge. First, invite accountability. The psalmist begins by asking God to examine and test him, a vulnerable position that welcomes scrutiny. Organizational psychologist Adam Grant has found that high-integrity leaders actively seek feedback rather than avoiding it. This openness to evaluation provides protection against self-deception, which Harvard ethicist Max Bazerman identifies as the greatest threat to ethical behavior. Second, cultivate proper emotional responses. When the psalmist says he abhors the assembly of evildoers, he's acknowledging that integrity involves not just actions but appropriate emotional reactions to good and evil. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's research demonstrates that emotions play a crucial role in moral decision-making, confirming the psalm's integrated view of moral character. Third, engage in meaningful worship. The psalmist's love for the house where God's glory dwells reminds us that transcendent experiences shape moral vision. Sociologist Christian Smith's studies of moral formation consistently show that engagement with transcendent reality through worship strengthens ethical commitments. Regular participation in meaningful worship isn't peripheral to integrity but central to its development. Fourth, stand publicly for what's right. The psalmist concludes with praise, in the great congregation, emphasizing the public nature of integrity. Moral psychology research by Jonathan Haidt suggests that public commitments strengthen moral resolve. By declaring our values openly, we create social accountability that supports ethical choices when temptation arises. Fifth, trust in ultimate vindication. The psalm opens and closes with confidence in God's judgment, providing security that transcends social approval. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on resilience shows that belief in ultimate justice helps people maintain ethical standards despite short-term costs. The psalmist's faith in divine vindication sustains integrity when doing right brings temporal disadvantage. The enduring relevance of Psalm 26 was dramatically illustrated on December 1, 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. Later reflecting on her decision, Parks said, "I knew someone had to take the first step and I made up my mind not to move." Her quiet integrity, grounded in faith and moral conviction, changed the course of American history. Like the psalmist, she stood on level ground when society's pressures pushed for compromise. Or consider the example of Oskar Schindler, who during the Holocaust risked everything to save more than 1,200 Jewish lives. Though initially motivated by profit, Schindler underwent a moral transformation that culminated in his famous list, compiled in October 1944, of workers to be transferred to his factory in Czechoslovakia. His integrity in recognizing human dignity when society denied it exemplifies the psalm's call to stand apart from evildoers. These examples remind us that integrity isn't just an abstract virtue but a concrete choice with real-world consequences. When the psalmist declares, "Redeem me and be merciful to me," he acknowledges that integrity often comes at a cost that requires divine compensation. This realistic view avoids both the naive optimism that integrity always brings immediate rewards and the cynical pessimism that integrity never matters. The Hebrew word for redeem, pada, used in verse 11 carried economic connotations in ancient Israel, often referring to the payment of a ransom price. This commercial metaphor suggests that integrity may require sacrificing material advantage for moral principle, a transaction that ultimately brings greater value, though the cost may be significant in the short term. Neuroscientist Andrew Newberg's research on religious experience has shown that contemplative spiritual practices activate brain regions associated with empathy and moral reasoning. When the psalmist describes standing in the great congregation with hands washed in innocence, he's describing rituals that modern science confirms can strengthen moral resolve through embodied practice. The communal emphasis of the psalm's conclusion reminds us that integrity flourishes best in supportive communities. Developmental psychologist Lev Vygotsky's concept of the zone of proximal development suggests that we grow morally through interaction with slightly more developed moral agents. The great congregation the psalmist loves provides exactly this developmental context for moral growth. What's striking about Psalm 26 is its confident tone without crossing into self-righteousness. The psalmist doesn't claim moral perfection but moral direction. This nuance offers wisdom for navigating the polarized moral discourse of our time, where legitimate moral conviction is often confused with rigid self-righteousness. The psalm models how to stand firmly for principles while maintaining humility. In our age of moral relativism, where absolute standards are often questioned, Psalm 26 offers a refreshing clarity about right and wrong without falling into judgmentalism. The psalmist distinguishes clearly between virtue and vice while recognizing his dependence on divine mercy, a balanced perspective that avoids both the pitfalls of relativism and self-righteous legalism. The literary structure of the psalm itself models integrity through its coherence and unity. Hebrew poetry scholar Robert Alter notes how the psalm's opening and closing frames create a sense of completeness that reflects the very integrity it describes. Form and content align perfectly, creating what literary theorists call an organic unity that reinforces the psalm's message. Interestingly, archaeological evidence from Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947, suggests that Psalm 26 was particularly valued by the Essene community that flourished from about 150 BCE to 70 CE. This sect withdrew from mainstream Jewish society to establish a pure community in the wilderness, embodying the Psalm's call to separate from corrupt influences. Their manual of discipline, discovered among the scrolls, echoes many themes from Psalm 26. As we conclude our exploration of this ancient wisdom, consider how Psalm 26 might guide your own journey of integrity in today's complex moral landscape. When faced with ethical dilemmas at work, family conflicts, or personal temptations, the psalmist's words offer a timeless framework. Examine yourself honestly, separate from corrupting influences, devote yourself to what's good, engage in supportive community, and trust in ultimate vindication. The journey of integrity isn't easy. It may bring temporary isolation, misunderstanding, or even persecution. But the psalmist's testimony echoes through the centuries. Those who walk the path of integrity ultimately find themselves standing on level ground, experiencing the stability and peace that come from living in alignment with eternal principles. In a world where compromise often seems inevitable and integrity increasingly rare, Psalm 26 reminds us that another path is possible, a path of undivided heart and unwavering commitment to what's right. This ancient prayer calls us to nothing less than moral wholeness in a fragmented world. Will you accept the challenge to walk in integrity today? Before you go, I want to personally invite you to be part of our growing community here at Prayer Universe. If this video touched your heart or brought you peace, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a prayer or message that can uplift your spirit. But most importantly, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, share just one word or phrase of motivation that this video inspired in you, whether it's hope, gratitude, peace, or something else. Your words matter deeply to us because they help guide the content we create for this channel. Together, let's build a space filled with faith, encouragement, and connection. Thank you for being here, and remember, every prayer counts. See you in the next one.